Everybody got real quiet. Are we ready to roll? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the organizational meeting for the City Council for the City of Radford for 2023. And welcome to all of you all. Thank you for joining us this evening. You may notice we are one empty seat up here, and Mrs. Foster had a commitment where she is traveling overseas. So as such, I will ask that she state where she is calling from and her reason for traveling. We do have her on speakerphone. Jesse, can you state where you are and your reason that you could not be present?
Sure. I am in Aruba, and I am celebrating a friend's 60th birthday. Okay.
Do we have a motion to allow Mrs. Foster to participate electronically for the meeting? So moved. We have a motion. Do we have a second? A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, you are now official, and we will officially begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If all will please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please have a seat. We are going to do this twice since we have an organizational meeting and a regular meeting following. If you'll please join us in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you all very much. Okay, Council, we have three items primarily to look at for our organizational meeting, and I'll explain a little bit about all, and then we'll go one by one. Organizational meeting is an opportunity to discuss meeting structure and to talk about how we do things. For example, at our last organizational meeting 2 years ago, we moved the location for citizen comments to its present location at the beginning of the meeting because previously it was after old business but before new business, and there were some items that citizens wanted to make comment on. We also changed the time limit from 2 minutes to 3 minutes. And so that's an example of how we address some meeting structure during the organizational meeting. We also have a number of boards and commissions that council has an appointment, has a seat on, and we need to look at filling the vacancies that exist. And what I thought we could do with that after we have our discussion, once we have the list pretty much filled out, we can do that by acclamation. So we're not voting on 17 different boards and commissions. And then finally, the election of a vice mayor. And I'll explain more about that when we get down to that, the role of the vice mayor and where we go from there. So as such, we will open up with the meeting structure. Is there any discussion on the structure of the meeting that we would like to consider this evening?
I think there's been a lot of discussion over the moment of reflection and how we wanted to address that. I've met with,
Would you press your microphone so folks can hear you?
Sure. I've met with people. It's one of the most talked about issues the whole time, throughout the campaign, throughout the city. And to me, it is very important that we do represent everyone. We represent everyone in this city. Just because if you don't share my particular religious beliefs, I understand that as well. So I know that has been a topic of conversation amongst everyone, and I think that's one of the reasons that we had asked for this to be on the agenda for us to further discuss if there was anything we wanted to do.
Well, let me give you a little bit of the history of where we have gone with that and why, and then we can talk a little bit about the structure of where we're going to go. In 2018, a number of folks had expressed their concern over having prayer to open a council meeting. And we looked at options that could work with that. What we settled on as a council was to have a moment of reflection that was preceded by a statement of inspiration, a comment to try to bring the community together, to serve some of those purposes, but yet to keep the opportunity for folks to exercise their faith, should they choose to, as a personal issue rather than a group-led activity. And so the moment of reflection was created so that folks could choose to say a prayer personally if they wanted to, could reflect on the contents of the meeting and prepare if they had something they wanted to bring to council, could just sort of center themselves and prepare for the meeting that was going to take place, however they chose to move forward from there. 2 years ago, the request from council was made to eliminate any additional statement and just go directly to a moment of reflection, which we began doing at that moment in time. Jesse, does that pretty much align with your recollection of what occurred?
Yes, we implemented that to be inclusive to everyone's viewpoints in order to center themselves to lead our community in the best way. We thought everyone needed their time to figure out how it was best to center them, not us, demanding it or dictating.
And I think one of the tricky pieces with this is that for those who would like to say a prayer prior to the meeting, this provides a space to do that. For those who choose not to participate in that, this provides the same space for them to exercise their freedom. The separation of church and state is one of those crucial issues that is always challenging, but certainly the way that we support and deal with our American ideals. And as we try to keep in mind the many different versions of faith that exist within the 18,000 or so residents of the city of Radford. So having said that, is there any additional thought or conversation that we would like to have on this?
Mayor, I want to add
Hang on,
that
Jesse.
when we did this,
Hang on 1 second. Bobby wanted to make a comment. Bobby, will you
Okay.
press your mic?
Yes. Yes, I mean, I don't know if I do this here or if I do this during
Well, we're
the,
continuing a discussion. You can
Continue
certainly make a
discussion.
motion if you choose to, but I don't know that we're ready for that. I think more people are probably going to want to talk. We'll probably talk about it
that's fine.
after a motion is made. So whatever statement you'd like to make, you have some time.
okay, I'll go and do that. Yes, I am concerned with the wording. I am interested in bringing back prayer to the city council. And I think a lot of people that I've spoken to are concerned that it should be here. So I am in favor of doing that.
Okay. All right, Jesse, you had something else you wanted to state.
well, yes, there's been a lot of rhetoric since this change. I want to just emphasize this did not ban anyone's time for prayer. This is a time for everyone to pray to whomever or whatever, or to not pray, to just be centered and reflect to get ready for the meeting. There are approximately 4,200 religions of the world, and so we felt to be all-inclusive, people would get to use this time to pray or reflect the best way that it would impact them to make good decisions for our entire community. So in no way, despite the rhetoric, did this ban prayer. I had Dr. Harshbarger sitting next to me. He prayed, he was Catholic, and he prayed every meeting. I know David as well prayed every meeting, as well as a couple other of our members. So this was not in any way an attack on anyone's faith. What it was more of an acceptance to everyone's point of view, not to ban it, but to actually increase a larger umbrella for everyone to pray to whomever they wish to, or if they choose not to.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, you have anything you want to add or any comment, question?
I mean, I think I agree. I don't think that anybody feels like it was banned. You can do anything you want during the moment of reflection, but when I think of reflecting, I think of looking at things that have probably already happened, things that I would like to, a reflection is something that you see a mirror image of typically, and when you pray or when you take time to, not pray, I guess, if that's your choice, you're praying for, in my opinion, I would be looking for guidance, for, to help me get through the meeting, to give me, knowledge and wisdom, and hopefully I'm going to do the best thing for the city. And that is what I think a lot of our citizens would be doing, no matter what God or deity or whoever they're praying to. I think that a lot of people would like to have that time to pray. If they don't want to, that's fine. I don't think that changing the wording from reflection to prayer is going to change what anybody does specifically, but I do think that it's a little bit more specific and seemed to be in line with a lot of people that I've spoke to. And I think a lot of the other people on council have spoken to. So I think this is a happy median in between. I don't think it's changing a whole lot, but I do think it's representing something that I think a lot of us have heard requests for.
Please, yeah.
When I look at this issue, to me, it was how can we come to a common ground? Because this is all about meeting in the middle and being accommodating to everyone. This is a very important issue. I think we've heard a lot about it. I certainly would never want anyone to feel unwelcome in these council chambers because of a belief system or something they did or did not believe in. So as I approach this, I talked with people on both sides of the aisle of this who were staunchly against it, who were staunchly for it. And there's been a lot of talk amongst all of us as well, because some people wanted to go back to how it was done probably 4 years ago. So I think that to really try to meet in a happy middle ground, maybe considering changing this from a moment of reflection to a moment of prayer with nothing being spoken or anything like that, provides a compromise. And I think that that's kind of, as we alluded to before this meeting, what we're searching for. We're searching for where we can all come together. And I just think that kind of hopefully gets us there. So that's
Well,
all.
I would not be comfortable with the language stating moment of prayer because that's a very specific thing. I would be fine with something along the line of moment of silence, with something in parentheses that says you may use this time for prayer or other personal reflection. I would be okay with that, and that would accomplish the same kind of thing if that's what you're interested in. But if we say moment of prayer, that's... Go ahead, Jesse.
If we're talking semantics and trying to be all-inclusive here for everyone to feel welcome, I have no problem in saying, this is a time of personal reflection or prayer. I don't mind adding prayer, but I don't want it to just say prayer because that is not welcoming and inclusive to everyone. But I have no problem in adding another word to make people also feel welcome to pray in case for some reason they don't feel welcome to pray. I've not heard that or seen that personally, but I have no problem adding personal reflection or prayer. That doesn't take anything from anyone, and I'm not opposed to that. But I think we keep it pretty short and simple and just unbiased and say this is your personal time for reflection or prayer before our meeting.
So would you all be comfortable with changing it to moment of silence and in parentheses, use this time for personal reflection or prayer? Would that be acceptable?
Yes, that'll work.
Okay. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion to change the moment of reflection to a moment of silence with an explainer that says to citizens or attendees are welcome to use this time for personal reflection or prayer? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion from Jesse. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? I think the ayes have it. Kelly, did you vote? I didn't hear you. I did. Okay. Okay. All right. So moving on from that, we do have a number of boards and commissions. I currently serve on the Regional Commission Board. I also serve on Virginia's first Regional Industrial Development Board, Chief Elected Official Board, and the Beautification Commission. Mrs. Foster serves on the CPMT. She serves on the Heritage Foundation and serves on the Social Services Board of Directors. All other positions are open at this time for any possibility. So, Seth, you had mentioned you were interested in the Planning Commission and Recreation Commission. I think those appointments would be perfectly fine based on your experiences. So if that pleases council, we could go on and slot Seth in those roles. Jesse, does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. We will still have one seat we need to fill on the Planning Commission. With you moving from citizen member to council member, we'll have a seat that is still vacant because you're essentially taking Naomi's spot and then there's an empty seat there. A citizen spot, yes. But we'll address that later. We'll open that up for people to be able to send their information, and we'll talk about that at the end of this meeting and then with the regular meeting as well. For New River Valley Community Services Board, Bobby, you and I have talked a little bit. That is one of the areas where we do address some of the social issues in the community, including homelessness. I know you're passionate about that. If you're interested in that, I think that might be a good fit for you to at least explore and to gather some information there. Would that be a slot you'd like to fill? Okay. Also, the same with the Fairview District Home Board, and David, you might be able to help us a little more with this. Primarily, that's providing housing for some older folks who might not otherwise have support. Can you tell us any more about it?
Sure. The New River Valley jurisdictions and then also Gwen and some others around us participate in the New River Valley District Home Board. It is closely tied to New River Valley Community Services because their organizational structure oversees that for us, so that may be something you may also it provides housing for elderly care that is not able to move in. Capital account and operational account is in and out of localities, but are managing a lot, so it may be something we also want to try out as well.
Would you like to be slotted in there for now, at least?
I'm not sure right now. What about, I'm concerned also, interested in the advisory commission.
Sure, that's an open seat. So the City University Joint Advisory Commission is made up of Radford City folks, both some staff members, certainly a council representative, and several citizens. Also several representatives of the university community, and that's where we come together to have discussion about issues that impact both city and university relationships. Typically, they talk about activities within the neighborhoods surrounding Radford University, joint projects that might take place, different programs that might come out of that activity. So it is a common sounding ground as much as anything, but also one of the things we've charged them with the last couple of years, or at least what I have suggested, is to look at the neighborhoods on both sides, east and west of campus, and to talk about issues that affect those neighborhoods, both in terms of our student residents and our full-time permanent residents, as well as improvements that could be made, things that come up. So those would be some of the things that will probably be discussed there as we move forward. And I know you, Kelly, you and I had talked about that as well. So, you know, however you all want to look at that, is that a role that you want? David, go ahead.
Yeah, and to add to that position by their bylaws does serve as a co-chair.
Right.
I was interested in that position. I do have 8 rental properties on both sides of the of the university, so that would definitely be something that I would be interested in as well. So.
And Jesse, you had mentioned, we'll come back to that in just a minute. We can talk through them all and then come back to them. Jesse, you had mentioned looking at stepping down from the Heritage Foundation Board and maybe moving over to the Chamber of Commerce as it aligns somewhat with some of the business activity that you have. Is that something you're still interested in doing?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Is there other interest for the Chamber of Commerce Board?
I would be interested in the Chamber of Commerce. I don't think that I could take on the Radford Heritage right now. I know that's a very busy working board, and I don't want to take on too many things as I'm still trying to learn the ropes of everything. I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to give it the time that it properly needs.
Okay. Let's keep going. The Highlanders Festival Commission needs a representative. Typically, it does not meet a tremendous amount of time, but planning the festival is important. I have been talking a little bit with Chad Clark as the director of the games and director of the festival this last year. I can serve in that role, but if someone else has an interest in that role, I have enough on my plate. I'm certainly happy to have someone else serve there. I will still probably have some conversation. I tend to MC that program and help facilitate where I can, but the more the merrier as far as participating. As long as we don't have 3 of us in one meeting, we're okay. Is there anyone else interested in the Highlanders Festival Commission?
No.
Okay. Tourism Commission. So our tourism program is a big part of our economic future. It is something that we work toward to try to build the quality of life here in the city of Radford, not just for guests, but also for our full-time residents. And as such, that's an incredibly important role. Naomi had been serving in that role, and I believe, was Charlie serving in that role as well? I can't remember who. We moved some people around a couple times. Was it still Naomi? Okay. So is there any interest in the Tourism Commission? Kelly, are you interested in tourism?
I mean, I could be, but that meets at the same time as the chamber, so I can't do, unless I can clone myself, I can't do
Well-
those.
I can step up for that if needed as well.
Okay.
I'm being flexible, trying to let you guys fill yours out and then.
Well,
I'll-
sure.
Yeah.
Well, Kelly, would you want to do tourism and have Jesse step into chamber, and then Heritage Foundation we can explore either at this time or at another point in time?
And Mayor, can I also add, I
Yes.
actually was approached by the chamber,
Okay. So they had mentioned to
and
you.
they are wanting, they had requested that I be the representative from council, and they are looking for a more active role. So I do think this is going to be a lot more hours than what it has been in the past if we do what their vision is for our relationship.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
If they've requested you, I'm not gonna go against something that they want to do, so
Okay. Would you want to do tourism then?
I guess I would need to do that, yeah.
Okay.
Put me down for the Fairview District Home Board.
Okay. All right, so right now, we have Joint Commission. Kelly, did you want to do that one as well, or Bobby? Which would you prefer? What do you all want to do?
I wouldn't mind taking that one,
All right, Kelly?
thank you.
And then Highlanders Festival, is anyone interested in stepping up for that one?
I'll step up for that.
All right. Well, I think we got a slate. So, is everybody okay with everything as presented?
You still have the Heritage Foundation?
Heritage Foundation, no, you're right. Who would like to step up to Heritage Foundation? Anyone else?
By default, Ms. Foster might keep that one.
Jesse?
Yeah, I'm fine with keeping that.
Okay, all right. And certainly, these are not set in stone forever and ever. I mean, this is something that while we do the appointments now, should something come up to where there needs to be a change or an adjustment, we can always revisit as we move further down the line. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Do we have a motion to adopt this slate as presented?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
I've got Davis on New River Valley Community Services Board, Horton on Planning, or Regional Commission, Gillespie on Planning Commission, Foster on Social Services Board of Director, Davis on Fairview Home Board, Horton on Virginia First Industrial, Horton on Chief Elected Official, Artrip on City University Joint Commission, Foster on Chamber of Commerce, Foster on Heritage Foundation, Gillespie on Festival Commission, Artrip on Tourism Commission, Gillespie on Rec Commission, Foster on CPMT, and Horton on Beautification Commission. Okay? So I think we're good to go. Jenny, you have it all? Rock and roll. Okay, our last little piece of business here is the election of a vice mayor. The role of the vice mayor, per our charter, is to serve in the capacity of the mayor if the mayor is not available for that person's duties. In the last 4 years, I've been very fortunate, knock on wood, to not have a reason to miss a meeting and to miss those duties, so it has primarily been ceremonial. Having said that, it is an important role because if I should not be available for running a meeting or to enact the duties as my office brings to me, someone would need to be able to facilitate that. With that, certainly having someone who has sat through an awful lot of these meetings and participated is certainly a positive with that. And as such, we're very fortunate that Jessie Foster has served not only on council for 4 years, but previous to that on school board for 4 years, as well as her various committee assignments, and has a lot of experience with that. And as such, I think she would make an excellent choice for the vice mayor role. I will open up the floor for any further discussion, and then we'll entertain motions and move forward from there.
I understand that having experience in something like that is definitely a positive. Nobody can deny, knowledge is power, and being able to do that. I also think that someone with a fresh perspective also is a good thing to have. I think that people that want to continue to have a very large role in city council and future endeavors in this chamber, I think deserve some experience to be led in that type of direction. I know that some other people on council may not have intended to serve this time and may not serve later on after their time here. So I think that while I think Jesse would be a good candidate, I would like to see Seth Gillespie have that role, in my opinion.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I second that.
Well, we weren't ready for motions yet, so, but I appreciate the second within the comments, but we will begin. I'll make a motion that I'd like to nominate Jesse Foster for the role of vice mayor. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any additional nominations for vice mayor?
I would like to nominate Seth Gillespie.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. So, Jenny, will you call the roll? And I guess we'll go through the motion for Jesse first and then the motion for Seth. Yeah. This is voting on whether to select Mrs. Foster for vice mayor.
Yes. Oppose.
That's a no, right?
Oppose, no. I mean,
Usually you just
Sorry.
say yes or no.
no. Sorry.
No.
No.
Yes.
She heard. She said yes. Yes. So if you'll call the roll for Mr. Gillespie?
Yes.
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 No.
No. Congratulations to Seth. The vote came down 3-2, and you're now serving in role as vice mayor. Okay. So having gone through all that, is there any additional business to discuss? I do have one more piece that I probably should have talked about, meeting structure, and I did mention this to everybody prior to the meeting. Typically, we have run the council meetings by getting items on the agenda prior to the meeting so that no one feels surprised, not to use council comments to make motions or to bring up items that way. And I'd like to ask council, and I'll make a motion to do this, but to continue that practice. Now, certainly that can be modified as needed, but the only time that we've changed it over the last 4 years has been if we had a proclamation or something that came up at the last minute, but not an action item that we would need to vote on as a council for action for the city government. Is that something you all would like to see continued so that we all are aware of the meeting structure prior to the meeting?
Yes.
Are you meaning to consider making a motion to make sure that we tell you what we want to talk about beforehand?
Well,
Is
I
that
think what we're
talking
trying to
about?
do is make sure we establish the agenda
Yes.
prior to, yes.
Okay, but that's.
Yeah,
you're-
that's what we're
you're
talking
gonna-
about. Mhm.
Okay, so you want, okay. Yes, I think we should all, would you like to put a time limit on, like, you can't bring
I mean,
anything up before 24 hours?
I think
before the
24 hours
meeting,
makes
or-
sense, but at least earlier in the day. I mean, 24 hours would be the minimum we would want to do, and for most things to put on the agenda, we need 3 days to advertise them, so that would be the real preference, is well in advance. But yes, that would be the whole piece, so that we didn't have folks during council comments saying, I'd like to make a motion that we spend $50,000 on X, Y, and Z, and then someone seconds it, and then everybody feels sort of caught off guard.
Is there a legal requirement for a time frame to be, I mean, aren't we allowed to bring up, I don't have anything, but for future, are we allowed to bring up something during the? Okay. And I greatly appreciate the Wednesday packet, for sure.
Let's say, for example, that you already had your agenda items set, but you wanted to add something to the agenda. You would make a motion to amend the agenda to add that item. So
When?
that's going to require at least a majority of council in order to add a new item that wasn't already on the agenda that everybody was prepared for.
Okay.
That's a meeting item, but in terms of letting everybody know, not waiting until the meeting to say, oh, I'd like to add such and such to the agenda, if that makes sense.
I was just making sure there
Yeah.
wasn't any legal things surrounding whether, so I couldn't, add something right now. That's
And that was my
illegal to do
understanding of
that.
her question is that, and you could make a motion to amend
Okay.
the agenda to add something right now.
Okay.
And of course, council would have to vote on it because it may be something that they weren't prepared to discuss.
Yes.
Or it could be something that they feel like they were prepared for and would agree to amend the agenda by
You're
majority
allowed to do that during
vote.
the meeting as long as everybody agrees to discuss
Correct.
it at that time.
Correct.
Okay.
And then let's say that, for example, but, to the mayor's point, if it's better to be able to notify city staff in advance of the meetings, at least 3 days, because that's normally that would be the minimum notice requirement for a regular meeting, so that we have an agenda ready in case the public wants to see, what the items are that are going to be discussed at the meeting.
Okay.
So it's better to have it on the agenda, and the agenda goes out, as you know, in advance the week prior to the meeting.
Yeah, I just was wondering, what the rules were. I don't ever intend to spring
Well,
anything on you guys. That's not
sure.
fun for anyone.
It can come.
And there's a difference between what's legal that we're required to do and what we can do, and what's sort of a best practice. Because again, one of the goals we've tried to have is as much transparency as possible, so that folks weren't surprised that suddenly we just added something to the agenda that night and talked about it. And that was, the whole reason I bring that up is that was based on a historical piece that came about prior to our council, prior to any council in the last 4 years, to where someone brought something up during council comments and made a motion. And it was something that might be very good for the community, but it's still something that, do you want to have something brought before you right at that moment, even if it's agreed to by 3 members, to where you have to make a decision? So that's the whole piece. What's a best practice?
Yes.
So that, I just bring
And
that up.
Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
Mayor, if I can always also add, we do a lot of our work and research prior to a meeting.
Right.
And so by the time we have the meeting, that's when we are all having educated conversation on a topic. But it's not only for our convenience, it's also for the community. The community looks at that agenda, and there are certain things that some folks will be more interested in than others, and it's being transparent with the community. These are the things we're going to discuss. These are the things we're going to be working through. So if it's something that's of interest to them, they certainly can weigh in.
Okay. All right, I don't have anything else. Is there anything else for us to consider as part of the organizational meeting?
I'm not sure if this would be exactly part of the organizational meeting, but I do request that at some point we maybe consider doing a retreat or
Oh,
something.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm already have that thought of, that we're going to look at that here. We were trying to let everybody get settled in and get going, and then we'll probably do a retreat in February or March.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yep. Anything else? Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn our organizational meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a
So
second?
moved.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll take a brief recess for the next 25 minutes and re-adjourn at 7 o'clock.